You have nature news? Do you want to do yours? I have nature news too.
Sure. Oh, it'd be crazy if it was the same thing.
It would be crazy. Go ahead. Let's see.
Mine's paleontology.
Oh no.
Okay.
Mine's different. Okay.
I had someone send me this one, and it was pretty cool. So, a previously unknown reptile species was discovered back in the 30s, but they actually hadn't analyzed it yet, not until 2019. They just live in some museum for forever. Finally, we should look at these bones.
I did see this. I did see this story.
Cool. So, it's named Mirasara. It lived 247 million years ago in what's now France during the Triassic. But what's really cool and unique about this fossil is that it had this interesting skin crest that was neither feathers or scales.
Interesting.
When they analyzed it with a CT scan, they were like, it's a new type of skin structure they've never seen before.
Huh.
So they're not sure. So during this time period, they said that there wasn't as much competition with this was just after an extinction event. So nature is open, baby. Like, you can evolve however you want. So they did. And I guess
that needs to be on a t-shirt, by the way.
You can evolve however you want.
Extinction is over right now. Evolution is open.
Look on the bright side of things.
You want.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess without selection pressures, lots of different adaptations can happen. And so there was this new type of skin structure. They are assuming, like any type of crest, that it was obviously for signaling or breeding or some kind of communication.
Or was it?
Literally no idea.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that there's more than just scales and skin out there. And there isn't any more, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't. So we just have to keep an open mind, like when we're looking at this kind of stuff. It's practically like looking at aliens. We know they're carbon-based, but sky's the limit otherwise.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot from that. I saw a lot of memes, because I had a lot of people online send me that story.
Yeah.
And then from that, I had a lot more than people send me. There's been all these memes circulating about, because hair can't be fossilized, we can't roll out that dinosaurs looked like, and then it's just dinosaurs with a bunch of different hairdos and stuff like that.
That's amazing.
I've had so many people send them to me.
I keep seeing ones online where it's like, what if they were fatter than they were? The best one I saw, they were like, what if a T-Rex was actually had the body type of sparrow? Because they've got the same bones, but sparrows have that head and then that chunky little bird body. Yeah. What if the T-Rex was more like that, not lean? Yeah. What's your nature news?
Mine is that killer whales have been found to use kelp brushes to slough off rough skin.
I did see
this. See this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
What is it? So, it's like another form of allopreening or something?
Yeah, essentially. So they found, at first, they used drones with quote-unquote really good zoom, is what they kept emphasizing, because they want to make sure that they understand that the drones aren't messing with the whale behavior. It literally is super far away. They're zooming in really far. And once they realized what to look for, once they saw this, and then they were like, oh, that's what they're doing, then they picked up on it, like that they were frequently doing this. So they go down, they grab certain types of kelp, like not all of it. So they're looking for certain heights.
We all have our favorite brushes.
No, right?
No, I'm not using one of those circular ones.
No, right? And so they pull it out, and then they rub their bodies, rub it between their bodies and stuff like that. And it's, I don't know, like a exfoliator.
A
loofah. A whale loofah. And so
they got to use each other because they don't have hands.
No, right? Just
rub it up and down.
Yeah, right. Well, on today's episode, that was all the nature news, but on today's episode, we're talking about nature's GPS and how animals find their way without Google Maps, essentially.
Without tools.
Yeah, without tools. Without tools. Other than in their noggin. So we've done a previous episode on migration, and we've talked about a lot of these things, but we've never really gone in depth into how. Like, we talked about, the wildebeest.
Yeah, or I definitely remember talking about what does the migration look like.
Yeah, what is migration look, but we didn't go into the biology, the how of it. So that's what we're going to go into this episode, is a little bit more of the how. So Laura and I each picked different animals, and this one we knew with each other because we just took groups of animals.
Yes, so we don't know what species, but we do know, we tried to see if we could have some variety. I have an insect and a fish, and you have
birds and mammals.
Okay, yeah. Because a lot of planet Earth, a lot of these animals are migrating using very similar things, brain tools. But I was lucky enough that my 2 species do not use the same type, which I was pretty stoked about.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And if you don't mind, I'll go first because it actually ties off of last week.
Oh, perfect.
So last week, you should go back and listen to it, we did swarms of locusts. And I just happened to choose the desert locust as my migratory species. I was like, perfect. So I am not going to go into the biology of everything because you should just go back and listen to our...
And it was a mini episode, guys. Yeah, so it wasn't super long.
Yeah, it was like 5
go listen
minutes.
to that one.
So get your biology.
Overstimulated. Yeah, they're overstimulated.
Yeah,
Just
hashtag
can't do it
relatable.
anymore.
So migratory locusts, which we did talk about in our swarms episode, and as Katy said, real quick, they go through 2 phases, the solitary and the gregarious. And both of them do migrate. It's just that the swarms do it in way bigger numbers.
Yeah.
But how do they know where they're going? So as you can imagine, you might want to know where a giant swarm of locusts is headed next, right? You can predict where they're going. And we did not cover that last time, which I'm really glad about.
And I actually mentioned that I just didn't have, I was like, this is a mini episode. I couldn't go into it too much.
Well, now we do. So it isn't just about the food. Like when we think of locusts, we think of like bottomless pits of eating, which we talked about. And that's how devastating they are. But is it that they're following their bellies in just any willy-nilly direction? No. So scientists think that this swarming behavior is not just to help them survive in an area with harsh and changing conditions, because these are, in particular, as Katy talked about, these migratory locusts, most of them, they're desert locusts, really, or migratory is kind of like a catch-all term, but mostly it's the desert locust. They're dealing with, because they live in a desert, drought and rain, and these conditions vary and they're really harsh. So, of course, they're going to swarm to get away from these conditions, but they actually think that it's also to colonize new areas after rainfall. So these locusts want to find the rain.
Yeah.
Because their eggs can only be laid in moist soil. They cannot lay them where it's dry.
You know, the desert locusts.
We live in the desert. But, so yeah, apparently there has to be enough water in the soil to be absorbed by the egg for them to survive. So they're like, gotta find a rainstorm, which is no easy thing to do. So they need to follow the rain. And they're moving between seasonal breeding areas, 3 of them, spring, summer, and winter. I don't know if they just don't really have a fall or that they're just not really moving in the fall. But between those 3 seasons, they're moving all over northern Africa and the Middle East, just all over. Some of it's back and forth, some of it's more circular, but they definitely are doing something and they're following these patterns. So the swarms themselves, they migrate in 2 different ways during when they're solitary versus swarm. So the swarms move in the daytime, which is different than when they're solitary, and they're nocturnal. And they move forward as a giant front, like a cloud front. They're just going forward.
Which is the terrifying part.
And in a rolling movement, so like the guys at the front, they land, they eat for a while. They let the ones pass over them, and then once things start to clear out, then they get up and move again. So it's just a constantly rotating feeding machine. They travel...
Which I feel like makes it worse.
Yeah.
That's just like a revolving...
That it is, or it's just a seemingly, like the machine aspect of it, like the unfeeling machine of destruction. They move between 5 and 130 kilometers per day. That's significant. Yeah. But they do stay cohesive, so because they are a swarm, they aren't just going anywhere.
Everywhere.
They're definitely staying together, probably because of pheromones. And scientists have found that typically these swarms are flying downwind. Which makes sense. You're a bug. You can't really go that much against the wind.
They're just let's go!
Just put on their little goggles and into the wind. But, I mean, they will to a certain extent, but usually it's downwind.
Well, because that's using up energy.
Yes.
I mean,
and it's actually more, which is cool, because you're like, well, duh, of course they're going to take the path of least resistance. Yes, but it's also for another reason. So they found that, yes, they're flying downwind, but... they're flying to this point called the intertropical convergence zone. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Which is when trade winds are coming south, monsoon winds are coming north, and they hit each other. And this is where rain occurs. And that rain belt is moving up and down Africa, depending on the season.
They're like, we got to find that moist dirt.
The sweet. They got to find the belt. So they go there. And going downwind, so if you think about weather and how storms work, air pressure, when it's high, the wind is going up. Low pressure is storm weather, so that wind is going That's why you feel the wind whenever there's about to be a storm. The air is dropping. So the little locusts are following that downhill current like a sled right into the rain, which is what they're hoping for. However, they don't always fly downwind. Sometimes they're blown off course, but they do redirect themselves, which shows some level of orientation. Like, it's not just follow the wind where it takes us, guys. There's something else. So what they think, this is very hard to study in a lab setting because it's a swarm of locusts, right? Like, you either have to do field observations or a lab. The lab in the field, they've only been able to choose their variables. They can only do so much in the field, and they're doing 5 locusts at a time. They're little mini swarms. But basically what they found is that their eyes and their brain, because we actually know a lot about locust brains from studying them for a really long time, is that they're really good at detecting patterns of polarization, which is how light filters through the atmosphere. And they can tell the position of the sun as the brightest spot in the sky, which is helping them use basically a sky map.
I just also like that they don't know it's a sun. They're just like, it's the brightest spot in the sky.
Follow the bright spot. Or avoid it. Depends. So they have these really amazing photoreceptors in their eyes to really pinpoint things. And when that's combined with the position of the sun at some level, their brain has to, if you're going to use the sun to orient yourself or anything in the sky, you also have to be able to tell time to some degree because it changes where it is depending on the time of day. Their brains,
and you have to know.
Their brains are capable of doing such a thing, they believe, because of these experiments that they've done. So, like, they're turning their heads to follow certain things. It's a lengthy scientific article. Dive into it if you want to. But they can detect polarization. That's probably what's happening, mixed together with directional cues from the wind, and then just following each other's pheromones. Now, when it comes to them in their solitary phase, things are a little different because they're not coming out during the daytime. So they are not orienting using a sky map because they actually can do this on moonless nights. These little solitary locusts, this is before they get into these giant swarms. They're still moving around because they want to look for food. Usually it's less than a kilometer per night. But once that first rainfall hits, they will fly up to 250 kilometers in one night to find that sweet spot. And that's why they're all coming together and then start to get crazy and gregarious. On those moonless nights, they're like, okay, they can't be following the moonlight or the starlight. They are, when the wind is high, they're going downwind because they're not fighting it. But when the wind is low, they would be following compass bearings. So they are orienting themselves somehow. They think dung beetles can use the Milky Way. So is it the stars? Is it something else? We don't know. And then does that switch? Do they not need that part anymore? There's still a lot of unknowns here. But there is a method to the madness of both the solitary and the swarm, which is pretty cool because they fly in very different ways at very different times. And it's not just very different ways, very different times. It's the same species. That they just have literally changed, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like level of change.
Which is just that is that's the crazy part is it's the same individuals are.
And if you look up the term sky map, that is a scientific term for how some animals navigate, and typically it's through sunlight or moonlight. So sky maps.
I talk about that a little bit here. So for mine, I talked about birds and mammals. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the magnetoreception or the magnetic compass. And I think that this is, whenever people talk about birds, or if you remember bird migrations, this is typically the one that people think of. So one of the ways that birds find their way is by literally sensing the Earth's magnetic field. And this is why it is kind of a big deal, as everybody's saying, oh, the Earth's magnetic field is shifting some. It's going to affect a lot more things than just birds. And it definitely affects the migration here. So it's sort of like an internal compass, and that ability, like I said, is called the magnetoreception. And it's not just some vague sixth sense. It's an entire sensory system that's built into their biology. Which is crazy. I remember, Laura, were you my... Yes. All right, I don't think we've ever told this story before. So our advisor, who is just a unique guy.
It was the best way to teach about this. I couldn't think of a better example.
But I will start by saying this was one of the few years no cops were called on him because
He's a great
he
person.
would take his class, he would blindfold all of us, pile us all into a white van,
which was the school's van.
Yeah, which was the school's van. But I don't know if it had.
I don't know. They just had a 15-passenger van. You're right. I don't think it said Malone on the side.
I don't think it said anything on it. So it's just a grown man with a bunch of clear kids, all blindfolded, just driving aimlessly around the city. And he was intentionally trying to get us off, our senses off.
He was just driving all over.
And zigzagging. And then we would just show up at a random place. And we would take off our blindfolds, and then we would have to say, here's where the direction of school is, here's this is where I think I am. And he would ask us a series of questions to test it.
Yeah. No, and he took us out one by one. It also wasn't like
one by
mass.
one, yeah.
One by one by the shoulder out there, and then take off the blindfold so we couldn't hear each other and be influenced.
Yeah,
so
we had no
looked
clue.
Real sketch. But it was really fun.
Really sketchy.
I remember being 90 degrees off.
Yeah, I was a little off, but I also remember we ended up in some random park by the campus, not too far from campus, but still, it was in a park, a bunch of kids with blindfolds on in a 15-passenger white van. After he had driven us around through alleyways, trying to completely throw us off. But again, like Laura said, it really does when you're that disoriented.
You're I'm somebody who does have no level of true orientation. Yeah.
And I normally do. I'm normally one who, if I go someplace one time, I'm normally pretty good with, I can repeat that based off of what I'm seeing around.
Yes, mine's visual cues for sure. But I'm really good at remembering the route after one or two times.
Yeah, me too. But whenever you're blindfolded, you have no sense of anything. And it wasn't let's just see where the sun is sort of thing. Because even that, I don't remember if it was overcast or something.
Because you didn't know where you are. You didn't know where you are relative to school. That was what it was. It wasn't even find north. Okay, easy with the sun. But it was find where we started.
Find the direction where we started.
Basically impossible.
Yeah, but it was interesting because you really did get to feel, hey, this is confusing. And humans have evolved. We really have lost any sense of anything. All right. So how does this, for birds then, this magnet reception, how does this actually work? Well, scientists think there are two main mechanisms, and both are wild in their own right, and then you put them together and it's just crazy altogether. So the first, it's in their eyes, specifically in proteins called cryptochromes that are found in the retinas of many birds. These cryptochromes are light sensitive, and under the right conditions, especially in blue or UV light, they undergo a chemical reaction that's affected by the Earth's magnetic field, which is nuts.
So cool. So they actually visually can see the difference.
Visually see.
That's amazing.
Yes. The current leading theory is that this lets birds see, like you just said, the magnetic fields as patterns of light and dark. Not like a compass rose floating in the sky sort of thing, but think of a lot of the video games that you can use your senses, and it's kind of like that trail, and you can see where animals have walked or see where a person walks.
I'm also envisioning the aurora. You know what I mean? For a bird, it's because since the aurora is magnetic too, it's when we can see
just
that.
Follow that. Yeah, just follow that kind of thing. And then there's the second theory, which is the magnetite. It's a magnetic mineral that's found in bird beaks and even parts of their brains.
That's crazy.
So think of magnite at a natural, compass
two rocks
needle.
That stick together, right? If you can buy magnetite from the store.
It can be. Yeah. And this is sensitive to magnetic forces, and it may help birds detect the strength and inclination of the Earth's magnetic field, the feeling their latitude or altitude, and being able to depict where we are here. But here's where we take a sharp turn into the bizarre quantum biology. And this is a whole, I'm not going to get deep into this.
Quantum biology.
Yeah, I'm not going to go
this is where
deep into this because this gets crazy. But European robins, for example, seem to rely on quantum.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Freaking robins.
No, right? To make magnetic reception work. According to a 2001 review in Nature Physics, the chemical reactions inside the cryptochromes involve pairs of electrons whose spin states are entangled, all right? And the Earth's magnetic field affects how long that entanglement state lasts, which in turn influences the bird's visual perception of direction. That makes it possibly the only known biological system that depends on the quantum effects to function. That's a leading theory. The amount of research that has gone into it, There's a lot, but it's not, I don't know. I guess it's not
fully
solidified.
Understand. Yeah.
Yes, because again, it's anything quantum anything is just what the heck, what is happening thing. So in other words, birds may be the only animals, possibly the only organisms that navigate by literally using quantum mechanics.
Wild.
Another way that they use is, again, like we know, sun compass and celestial cues, which Laura talked a little bit about this, so I'm not going to go ton into it. But birds are able to use the position of the sun in the sky like a compass. But here's the genius part. They don't go, oh, there's the sun, must be west. They actually adjust for the time of day, and this is where the circadian rhythm kicks in. The internal clock that lets them estimate what direction they're heading based on where the sun should be at the time.
Exactly.
So like Laura talked about, yeah, it should be, they should know. Same thing with nocturnal migrants. Again, I'm not going to go over this because Laura kind of talked about it too. Back in the 1960s, though, researchers built little planetariums for birds, which I think is just like adorable anyway. Yeah. And they put migratory birds in these dome-shaped setups, projected the night sky, and then rotated the stars. And when they did that, birds would actually change directions of where they needed to go. So that was like a well-known
That's kind of
sight.
like they did not quite the same thing. They didn't do it with the planetarium, but with the locusts. They stuck them in a box and they tethered their little tiny locust bodies while they flew. And they and like when they would change light.
Like shift.
Like sunlight rather than it was similar.
Yeah. So something like this is a lot easier for us to understand and to study over quantum anything.
Yeah, because our bodies can do this, right? We can navigate by the stars and the sun. Yeah. And we do this. Some of us more so than others, but
yes, but we can figure this one out. So this is a lot more, I don't know, widely accepted, widely understood, and widely studied. And everybody's like, yep, nope, this is a thing. This is a 100% thing. Whereas the quantum side of it, I think it's still so far outside of our understanding.
Yeah, because our eyes just can't do that. We just it's hard to conceptualize something that you can't imagine.
You can't even grasp.
Yeah, like.
So another way that birds actually use is visual landmarks and topography. All right, they have the magnet reception and they read the sun and the stars, but sometimes they just go full Google Street View and they rely on visual landmarks to find their way. And it's not just, oh hey, here's this. No, it's they build a map in their heads. They know the coastline, rivers, valleys. Yes, nowadays it's highways, buildings, intersections. Like they remember and they use. Think of like the MVPs of this system. 100% was a homing pigeon.
Yeah,
they didn't just memorize one route. They can create what's called like a cognitive map, like Laura was talking about earlier. It's a mental image of the landscape from above. And in one study published in Nature, pigeons were released from unfamiliar locations, and rather than flying in a straight line, they followed winding roads, railroads, clearly recognizing and using these landmarks to orient themselves, to be like, I feel like I need to go over here, so that way we can find their way back. It's almost like you can take them a little bit farther outside of their comfort zone in a way, and they'll use these visual cues to help get themselves back. And again, homing pigeons, they were the A+ students here.
Yeah.
And even long-distance migrations like storks and geese are believed to use major topographical features.
There's a mountain range that we always pass over.
Yeah, what's the geese? I know you talked about the geese that go over
the Himalayas.
Everest.
Yeah. I think, was it bar something?
Barred goose.
Bar-headed goose? Bar-necked
I think
goose?
so.
One of those.
Yeah, I think it is that one. But yeah, they go over the Himalayan mountains, which is nuts. And they're very consistent. Like, across continents year after year. If you guys ever use iNaturalist, or that's how I found the painted buntings this year. I looked at where the hot spots were in my area.
They follow the same route. Yeah,
in the previous years, they're going to follow the same pathway. And so that's why I was able to figure it out, intercept them, and use that. Briefly, too, some use olfactory cues. Smell as a map. Vultures, the ones that have a stronger sense of smell. Pigeons, again, because they are kind of like the low-key rock star. Yeah, and so they think that, what are they smelling? Birds detect volatile atmospheric compounds, basically tiny airborne chemicals, that vary depending on the environment. So it's inherited maps and learned routes. And so they pick it up from the flock from the year before. And then they're like, oh, I know where to go this time. I know what to do. I know how to, if we get blown off course, because it happens, if a storm comes through and it shifts its course, we can figure out how to get back. But yeah. So some of the big questions that science is still chasing obviously anything with the cryptochromes. Are they really using quantum entanglement? Or is it something else? Because again, this is something that some people are starting to do research on, but it's still highly debated, still highly controversial. That's one of the big questions. How do birds integrate multiple navigational systems? I was reading some really cool papers on, yes, we have a good bit of research on the different systems, but it seems like birds are layering multiple different things. How does one, let's say if if they're relying on smell, if that gets all messed up, do they have a default? Or is it, and so it's just all of those different layers. So anyway, so birds, they definitely rely on a bunch of different types and bunch of different varieties. One, I like birds, but I'm definitely going to be following up on this whole quantum.
And how cool would it be if they could finally make some goggles? Let us experience it.
Dude, and people knock her like, well, who cares if the bird migrations are thrown off? No, we should care, okay? Because pollinators are so many species, and we've talked about that in several other episodes, so many species of plants and things that we rely on these pollinators and things, and if we don't have them, if they get thrown off course, if they start to die, then it's all game over. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. This bird one in particular, it was tough to keep it at a high level because there's so much research out there and so many theories, because it's not just one thing. It's so many different things.
Yeah, and insects, well, and this will lead us into our next one. Insects and fish are much lower down the evolutionary chain than birds and mammals. So it only makes sense that as an animal progresses through evolution, they are coming up with more and more systems because their brains are getting more sophisticated and things like that. My insects, they're using sky maps and probably visual cues. I know we've talked about monarchs before. They're following wind patterns down New Mexico. Yeah. They don't have special eyeballs that let them see magnetic fields. They might be able to, might be some that do feel magnetic stuff, but it doesn't surprise me that it's more basic. Which then leads me to my next thing, which is fish. Not much more sophisticated than insects, but a little. And I specifically wanted to focus on the American eel because I cannot talk about this fish enough. I just think the eels are so cool.
Dude, it's so cool, but also so insane.
Yes. The whole thing. Yeah. So
Are you going to talk about how we don't really know where eels come from? Okay.
Yeah, because that's like the best part of this whole thing.
Because I know we've mentioned that before in previous episodes, but I really don't think it can be stated enough.
Yeah. There aren't very many mysteries left on our world, I feel like.
But this is one of them.
The eel to keep going. So real quick, bit of background, because not everybody knows what an American eel is. Everybody thinks of electric eels and things like that. It's the only freshwater eel in North America. They're slimy, like you would imagine an eel is. They can be found in the Great Lakes and in rivers and streams upriver of the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf Coast. So you're not over by California, like this side of the States and North America. But some do stay in brackish water near the coast. At maturity, males can be about 1.5 feet and females can get up to 4 feet, which is significant, and up to 9 pounds. They hunt at night, and they can live anywhere from 5 to 40 years. It just depends on conditions. In particular, if they live in brackish water, a lot of times they live longer because they mature more slowly. And
wait, they mature slower in brackish water?
I guess just conditions are probably harsher.
Yeah.
And then they are an endangered species according to the IUCN. There used to be so many freaking eels, like it was an industry. Now they're in trouble for many reasons, not just overfishing, but also damming up rivers and habitat loss and all kinds of stuff. But only really in the past 20 years has research really taken off on these elusive fish. I don't know if people just didn't care before then, or nobody was like, somebody should study that. What is happening to these eels? But thankfully we did. And so the story of
I think a lot of them, it is one of those things that because it wasn't an issue before, everybody just go, whatever, eel. It's kind of like fish. Yeah, whatever, fish, like, whatever.
Yeah, they're here, they're around, and there's so many of them, and then all of a sudden there wasn't so many of them, so they were like, I guess we better figure out where they're all going. So, there are two kinds of migratory fish, and they're actually navigating the same way, which is nice that it's covering both at the same time when I talk about eels.
Yeah.
You've got anadromous, which is salmon. They're spending most of their life in the ocean, and then they go to freshwater to breed. Eels are the opposite. Yeah. They're catadromous, which means they spend most of their life in freshwater and go to the ocean for breeding. In particular, though, the one reason I chose eels is because this whole thing is not that well understood.
Yeah.
All we know is that they head to...
Literally all we know.
All that we know is that they head to the Sargasso Sea, which is warm and about 2 million square miles. So we're like, they're somewhere in this 2 million square miles. It's surrounded on all sides. It's the only sea that doesn't have any land borders, and it's only called a sea because it's surrounded on 4 sides by current. So it's basically its own little sea, and it's full of vegetation, like crazy amounts of seaweed and stuff like that. So it's like a jungle in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Surrounded on all sides by currents, which just sounds cool. And to this day, it is 2025. No one has ever seen an eel lay eggs before anywhere in the Sargasso Sea. How? I'm telling you, if I was a millionaire and I had just money to burn, I would go camp myself in the middle of the Sargasso Sea. And I would be diving every day to see this happen.
Yeah, figure out
my
what
claim
the
to
heck
fame
are they
would
doing.
Be, I saw it. I saw them spawn. I saw them mate, because we've also never seen that. I would see them mate, and then I would see them lay eggs, and I would be a total voyeur and be 100% on board with it.
Yeah, it is a complete mystery as to, all, like Laura said, all we know is that they go there, and beyond that, we have no clue.
And like, again, how have we not... I just can't believe that nobody has been like, I'm going to go, and I'll go. But I guess it's probably the funding. Like, who can afford to stay there long enough? And then because of how densely vegetated it is, we can't rely on drones because you can't see anything.
Yeah.
They could be going way down there to do stuff.
Yeah.
So you need, like, machines.
They need
like,
privacy.
Real eyes. Yeah, makes sense.
They need such good privacy.
They're like...
This is like the Bigfoot of the sea.
Yeah.
Like,
we know they're having sex. We just don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
And it matters. No, but what we do know then is once they're there.
We need to know.
Yeah. That once they're there and they lay their eggs, their larvae hatch. And these larvae are leaf-shaped, just tiny clear leaves that float through the ocean. And they transform into what's known as glass eels. And they're called that because they're see-through. This is all the same species, mind you. It's just different steps have different names. Like larva, tadpole, froglet, that kind of thing. So the glass eels are like 2 inches long, little threads, okay, in the middle of the ocean. Because the Sargasso Sea, forgot to say, is in the North Atlantic, northeast of Cuba. Basically, if you went straight east out from Georgia and Florida, you'd run into the Sargasso Sea. Yeah. So they eventually, somehow, end up on the coast of North America. And then they're going to start their journey inland. They head upstream and grow into 4-inch long little eels called elvers, which is so cute.
Yeah, that is a cute name.
And then even larger, what's called yellow eels. And this is what they stay basically most of their time as. They're like a yellowish color, and they're just existing. And they just exist in streams and rivers for at least a decade before they reach maturity. Sometimes
which is
30
crazy.
years. They're just hanging out. I cannot tell you guys. I guess how many summers ago was this? Maybe 3 summers ago? Lost my crap
I can't blame you.
Doing a summer camp and found an eel. I was like, all the campers were like, okay, this is cool. But I was like, you guys, this is crazy.
You don't even know.
Like, I was freaking out. We couldn't catch it, but I saw it. I had it in my hands for a second, and it was nothing. It had to have been an eel. And it must have been one of these yellow eels because it was probably only like this long.
Yeah.
But still, like, pretty long.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, and I knew it wasn't a snake because of the way it fell.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a freaking eel.
Yeah. I mean, you are a biologist, so you do know what you're talking about, so I trust you.
To a point.
To know the difference between an eel and a snake.
Yes. So after this decade or 30 years even, they go through what's called silvering. They actually turn a silver color. But more importantly, they get reproductive organs because they didn't need them till then. So they go through puberty, they get the reproductive organs, they get chubbier, and they get bigger eyes. All of that.
I like how they're like, you know what also you need? You're going to get some sex organs and bigger eyes. Just like...
So then they start that migration back to the ocean because they need to get chubby. They can take their grand old time, I guess, as babies heading upstream.
I guess.
Which you still think would be the harder thing to do, fighting currents, going upstream.
Yeah.
But they get chubby to go back down, I think, because they need to go it faster. They usually do this in the fall and winter time. But how do they know where to go? Honestly, I'm sorry to tell you, we still don't actually know about American eels. But we do know about their cousins, the European eel, which is basically the European version. They actually, crazily enough, I had no idea of this, European eels also migrate to the Sargasso Sea to reproduce. All eels. They just heard the Sargasso Sea was the place to be. And, like, one's from Europe, like, one's from the Americas. They're like, this is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
So it goes back to then what... Okay, there has to be something else other than habitat that makes this so perfect.
Yeah, it's just... Yeah, it's eeltopia. I don't know.
Yeah.
So...
There's got to be some, like, secret eel club down there.
Yeah. Like... Well, and so they obviously... from literally other sides of the Atlantic Ocean are finding the same place. And not only do they have to go
insane
to there, but then they have to go from there to where they're going. And sure, could they just be floating around? Yeah, but they also might end up anywhere in the Atlantic Ocean if they just floated.
Yeah.
So what the current theory is, based on some really cool lab studies on European eels, is that they also think it's magnetoreception, kind of like Katy said.
But again, it's like, why here? Like,
yes.
what
That's the thing that we don't
there?
know. We have no idea about that. We just know that we think that this is how they do it. So in a lab, they eliminated all other orientation cues. No light, no any.
Just completely throw
the
them
black
off.
boxes. But they could always orient using magnetic north. Not that they would point north, but using magnetism, they could always orient themselves and they would change direction. So this guy built these multi-chambered systems, and he would take he had little baby glass eels. He would pull them out and he'd put them in a different chamber on different days, and he could control the magnetism of each of these chambers. And then in this chamber, there was like 12 doorways that they could just choose where to go next. And they would choose based on the magnetism of the surrounding chambers and this one. And what they found was that so on different points of planet Earth, there are different intensities of magnetism, which Katy brought up for a second with your magnetite stuff. So it's not just like even magnetism. It's just not like, that's north. Okay, yes. But it's more intensely north the further you go.
Yes.
And it's weaker when you get towards the equators. You might be feeling a tug at the equator where you're feeling pulled when you get closer.
Yeah.
So,
which also has to be insane to be like, I need to go. Yeah. Like you just
magic, straight up
and you
magic.
don't know why.
Yeah.
You just have to go.
Just being pulled. Well, and so because there are these different points, obviously in the Atlantic Ocean, from the Sargasso Sea to Europe, there are levels of intensity. So he was mimicking specific locations along their route. And based on those locations, they would always choose a chamber that would be in a direction that would take them into the Gulf Stream. If you put their little chambers on a map, they would always go, depending on the magnetism of each section, they would always choose, this way gets me to the Gulf Stream, that current. So when they're born, they know, I must get in the Gulf Stream. Like, I need the Gulf Stream. Whatever that means to their little head, they know it's innately born. This is not a learned thing. This is just in their brains, they know. And it also depends on water temperature. I don't know if it was a different study or the same study, but basically when the water temperature was a certain level, that was a cue for migration. So I think this was a different study on adults. If it was migrating temperature, they would always orient a certain direction. But if it wasn't migrating temperature, they would just willy-nilly swim around. So it was not just orientation, it was also water temperature. So that the two things combined are helping them navigate. So scientists think that they follow increasing magnetic activity when they're babies, and they reverse that in their heads when they're adults. They're like, I want to feel less tug. Like, they go decreased magnetic activity. Which is pretty mind-blowing considering this is a fish.
Yeah, an eel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that none of this is learned. It's just born knowing all of this complicated magnetism stuff. And that we still have so few answers. But salmon also use magnetoreception. It's just, like, basically opposites. We just know a lot more about salmon because they're not going in these... They're coming in stream to spawn. We see it happen. Where they're not going to some mysterious ocean location to do all of this stuff. So
what's interesting too is I just looked on a map. Did you know that the Sargasso Sea and the Bermuda Triangle significantly overlap?
And We also talked about the Bermuda Triangle when I talked about sharks 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Because that is a crazy magnetic field thing there. There's got to be something. It must be easy to locate it. I also thought what was really interesting about this is that they brought up, so eels have been around for a very long time in the evolutionary scheme of things.
Yeah.
Or in the timeline of Earth.
Yes.
So when our oceans, during the Ice Age, our oceans were much lower. Like, significantly lower because of all of the glaciers. So, like, migrations for these eels weren't actually that long back in the day.
Yeah.
But they have increased significantly with changes of both ocean currents and sea levels rising. So, like...
All right, I just found my next rabbit hole. I'm going to deep dive into this whole Bermuda Triangle, Sargasso Sea, and the evolutionary history of, like, where we think... You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah, has it moved?
We had Pangea, Yeah, has it, where, and why? Because, it's just bizarre that there's so many
Earth's magnetic field does change. Ocean currents do change. It might always not be where it was, but these poor eels are now trapped in this 1,000-mile migration because they're like, I need the Sargasso Sea. They just now have to ride currents for a lot longer and rely more on navigation than they ever have before.
Yeah, which is crazy. But then also, because a long-standing theory at the Bermuda Triangle is magnetic. Something is bizarre here, and so
it messes stuff up. And I'm sure we'll talk about this at the very end too. But the reason why any of this is even being researched, I mean, is it cool? 100%. Most of us conservation people or biology people would just research this for the sake of researching. But the reason why money is being put towards it is because there are human implications for navigation. The Navy is interested in this because
absolutely.
They're thinking, actually, navigating through magnetism is probably better than through satellite imagery. So we need to invent a magnetization system to help ships navigate through the ocean.
Yeah.
At least
better
different
than
we
a
do
compass.
now. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Better than a compass.
Yeah. Alrighty. Talking about magnetic fields and everything, let's then jump into mammals. Because, again, as we were talking about how we're increasing complexity here, so we have the birds, and then we have the mammals, which is a higher, for the most part, a higher intelligence level and all kinds of things. So instead of soaring through the sky, many mammals are place-based travelers. They build deep mental maps on their surroundings. They remember the landmarks, they track scent trails, and they pass that knowledge on generation after generation. Whether it's a bear returning to the same berry patch year after year, caribou following ancient migratory paths through the Arctic, or humpback whales crossing oceans with crazy precision.
Yeah, considering there's very few landmarks in an ocean.
Yeah, there's nothing. So again, the magnets, they definitely have a sense of Earth's magnetic field, which again, I would be interested then to see when did we ever have that?
Away? Yeah.
Yeah, when did it go away?
I don't know if we'd ever be able to figure that out, but it would be amazing because they've definitely, like, you'd have to start by looking at current indigenous peoples.
Well, because we always followed the animals. We followed animals, you know what I mean? Because we were the hunt and gatherers, and and so we followed them.
Yeah,
so
we're not really migrating. We're following migratory species.
We're following them. Yeah, I don't think that we've ever migrated to rely on
Yeah, you're
that.
totally right. We're just following stuff.
Yeah, but turns out that some mammals also seem to sense the Earth's magnetic field. Oddly enough, one that I didn't really know about, but I'm going to talk briefly about here, moles.
Oh, that makes sense. You're underground. How else are you going to know where to go?
Right? Specifically European moles. First of all, I'm in Texas now. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. Finding moles in a garden, I remember that was a horror. Like, you could not shove a shovel into the ground without being like, am I going to hit a mole today? Am I going to hit a mole today? You don't have that worry down here. So, I mean, that's kind of a relief. But that's one of the unearthed childhood fears that this brought up again is, am I going to shovel a mole in half today? Kind of thing. Because that happened because they're everywhere up north.
Yeah.
But moles, European mole species, when tested in controlled lab settings, show a clear preference for building nests along the north-south axes, which is fascinating.
Very specific.
Yeah, they're underground, no sun, no stars, no nothing, and still they're aligning like north-south.
Little grids underground.
Weird.
That's bizarro.
Right? Bats, too. Experiments with species like the big brown bat suggest they rely on magnetic cues when navigating in unfamiliar terrain. So it's like they'll use visual cues and everything like that until they're in something unfamiliar. Then they're like, let's figure this out. And research.
Else.
Yeah, and researchers altered magnetic fields in the lab, and the bats definitely changed directions, suggesting that they are calibrating some sort of internal compass. But here's where it gets kind of even weirder. Cows, deer.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard about that they orient themselves certain directions.
Yeah, so a 2008 study used Google Earth, yes, like Google Earth that we all know, to analyze body orientation of thousands of cows and wild deer all over the world. And what did they find? An overwhelming tendency for these animals to stand in a north-south direction, which is so bizarre.
I've heard, though, that I don't think I'm making this up.
While grazing or resting. Let me just clarify that.
I feel like I have heard, in the context of natural navigation stuff, that this is because of wind. Grazing animals don't want to be just biffed over or have to expend too much energy.
They don't want to be biffed over.
You know what I mean? So, like, they're orienting themselves, and they also don't want to face into the sun or away from, you know what I mean? So, like, it makes sense that they do have a preference of,
yes,
I'm going to stand this direction because you're doing most of your day standing, and you're pretty broad. So
yes. Yeah, and it goes back to those cryptochromes. Like, there is the same light-sensitive proteins found in the bird's eyes. While mostly associated with circadian rhythms in mammals, it's possible that in some species they could contribute to magnetic sensing of, hey, this is the better way. But study after study keeps pointing literally in the same direction, that there's something there as far as mammals who even migrate or clearly don't. And mostly if cows are just doing it while chewing grass, like,
it's not for migration, it's for something else.
Yeah, it's for some other reason. Like you said, does it have to do with the light? Does it have to do with the wind? Some other ways that mammals migrate, like we said with the birds, is olfactory mapping. All right, the smell is a map. They use their noses. Species like wolves, bears, rodents rely on scent memory to map their surroundings. These animals aren't just reacting to what's immediately in front of them. They're building olfactory landscapes, essentially.
Yeah.
Remembering where certain smells are the strongest, where trails intersect, or where food was once found. It's not just what they smell, it's where they smell it that they make these maps. Some mammals even lay down scent trails to help orient themselves. Think about foxes, wildcats, some domestic dogs and stuff. They mark their territory, yes, but they also create scent references to help them track their movement and return to key locations. Research suggesting that elephants can detect distant water sources or even rainfall from miles away, and they believe that's based off of scent alone. It's like, imagine you can kind of smell when rain is coming, but imagine smelling rain coming like miles and miles away. Spatial memory and cognitive mapping, again, most mammals are what we call place-based navigators. They're not migrating across oceans using stars. They're building detailed internal maps about their surroundings. That's what we do, the spatial memory side of it. Say again?
Their home, like their territory. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's, for most mammals, including us, that's more what we do, is the spatial memory. Rats, squirrels, for example,
with their nuts.
They're pros at remembering where things are, where they cache their food, where the entrance to their burrow is, and that is all a cognitive map. The other, obviously, because it's also mammals, social learning, cultural roots. Well, let's start with whales, for instance. Species like humpback whales migrate across thousands of miles every single year, and they follow the same exact paths, which obviously becomes a problem if, like, with shipping routes, and then they crisscross paths with shipping routes. And these routes are what they call cultural, because they're passed down from one generation to the next. Calves follow their mothers, and over time, then they remember that exact path to the distant feeding ground and breeding sites.
Yeah.
And they're learning that the migration route, the same way we learn to drive the family road trip. You know what I mean? Whichever way you're... Yeah. And so whichever way your family always kind of went, that's sort of what you pick up on and where you get to go. And that's why they're starting to say now that people who rely on GPS so much have a much weaker hippocampus and part of the brain than others, because we're not relying on the cognitive maps that we're building. We're relying on a mindless thing, and so that part of our brain is getting significantly weaker. Let's talk real quick then, we'll wrap this up here, about ocean navigation, because we've mentioned whales and everything, but now you're in the open ocean. How no roads, no landmarks, how the heck does this happen? The short answer is we don't know everything. Again, we think that it has to do with the magnetic fields of Earth, but we're not 100%, not 100%. One, it's hard to study. Two, you can't ask them.
Yeah.
You can't put them in a lab.
Right.
So our options are pretty limited. So there's definitely the sun plays a factor. Light polarization patterns in the atmosphere, especially at sunrise and sunset, may help some species determine direction, even over open waters. It's subtle, but if you're turned to the right, light shifting, it can become
Follow
a
the sunrise
cue.
or sunset would be an easy thing for whales. Yeah.
Yes. But then whenever you get into more oceanography, temperature and salinity gradients that they think that they're picking up on, because some parts of the ocean are going to be saltier, essentially, than other parts. Temperature, that's why you have currents. And so are they remembering the currents and knowing, oh, hey, it's cold water. I need to go, cold,
3
warm.
hours in cold, and then,
then it'll get warm kind of thing.
Yeah.
Another, and I think one of the cooler one, is the infrasound, which whales are thought to detect low-frequency earth sounds, natural vibrations from things like ocean waves crashing against a continental shelf, like on the bottom, underwater earthquakes, that kind of stuff. They're starting now to think that whales are picking up on these super, super, super low frequency, just the earth sounds, the natural vibrations that Earth is giving off.
Yeah, because I'm sure it's like when you get closer to the poles, like if you're migrating towards a pole, the sound of that ice underwater, or just the groaning of it shifting, that would obviously be like, I'm headed the right way if I'm headed south,
Yep. So the big takeaway about mammals, it may not just be using star maps, but they're running highly involved multi-sensor navigation maps of some sort. Again, it's the layering, just like it was with the birds of, hey, I have this and this, let's just stack all this stuff up.
Well, that and the combination of mammals are known, our whole, not goal, but our whole strategy for survival is teaching and learned behaviors so that our young have a better chance. So you can see a lot of these navigation things are learned navigation things rather than just born instincts like some of our lower evolutionary tree things.
Yeah. But it still goes back to food and mating, and that's, you know what I mean? That's the primary. Yeah, that's the primary driver of these. I need to pass on to my genetics. I need to find food, and this is how I do it. Whereas, again, humans, we haven't really had to do that
for a long time.
Yeah, in a long time, if ever. Because again, we were just talking about hunting gatherers. We followed the things that were migrating, and so we didn't have to really do that. So yeah, like Laura was talking earlier, there is a lot of really important things that we can learn. One, if anything, it's how are we destroying all these things,
messing up some serious systems.
Yes, especially whenever we are doing a lot more things that are throwing off magnetic fields and everything.
Ocean temperatures and salinity. Yeah.
Yes, whenever we mess all that stuff up, we're messing everything else up. And whenever people are like, oh, who cares about whales? Who cares about the birds? Who cares about the bats? Again, especially the pollinator species, they are important. And I don't know about you guys, but chocolate, coffee, all those kind of things are important to me anyway. And so
can you imagine, we're going to start literally running into each other more. If your navigation gets thrown off, you're going to collide. We're going to run into things more like ocean or birds or whatever it is, but actual collisions.
Yes. So I mean, there is a lot of importance for us to be studying this sort of stuff, and it is really cool. I mean, it is really neat. So yeah, that's something to keep looking into. I will say again, though, because Laura was saying earlier, because there is so much financial investment in this kind of stuff, there is typically always some sort of science coming out about something how do animals migrate.
Yes, for lots of reasons. One of the funders of eels is the dam companies. Because of laws saying that there has to be a certain survival rate, dam companies are held liable for that, and so they want to know how the eels are migrating so they can make their dams. The whole thing, it's all tied together. Whether they care about the animals or not, finances and companies are involved in this stuff. So if we can harness that for the good of research, we can find out a lot of stuff.
Same thing with windmill farm. They have to understand bird migration patterns and things like that because they have to keep a low casualty rate. So it is definitely interesting, but because of all of this, there's constantly research being done. There's constantly new stuff coming out. So it's definitely changing and evolving, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Make sure you go check us out on Patreon and support us if you can. Like us on all of our social media channels. Next week, we will be having another mini-sode, and then we will have another long episode after that.
All right. See you guys soon.